You know that moment when everything you thought you knew about yourself gets turned upside down? When a single night changes the entire trajectory of your life? This is that story, my story. And it started on an ordinary Tuesday evening when my roommate fell asleep on our couch. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning. The apartment smelled like burnt popcorn and regret. It's mostly mine for attempting to cook anything more complicated than instant ramen. I stood in our tiny kitchen, waving a dish towel at the smoke detector while my roommate, Adrian, laughed from the couch. You know, Marcus, for someone with a chemistry degree, you're remarkably bad at basic kitchen chemistry, he called out, his voice warm with amusement. I shot him a look over my shoulder. Popcorn isn't chemistry. It's chaos in a bag. His laugh was infectious, the kind that made his whole face light up. Even after 6 months of living together, that sound still did something to my chest, a tightness I'd learned to ignore. To push down into the same place I'd hidden so many other feelings over the years. Adrian Chun had moved into my 2-bedroom apartment last summer when my previous roommate, Jake, moved in with his girlfriend. I'd posted the room on some app, expecting the usual parade of questionable strangers. Instead, I got Adrian, a graphic designer with an easy smile, an encyclopedic knowledge of obscure indie films, and a habit of leaving sticky notes with terrible puns on the refrigerator. He was also devastatingly attractive in a way that felt almost unfair, not in the obvious gym rat way that my ex David had been. Adrian's beauty was subtler, the curve of his jaw when he concentrated on his design work, the way his dark hair fell across his forehead when he forgot to get it cut, the gentle strength in his hands when he gestured while talking about something he loved. I'd noticed all of this, cataloged it like data points, and firmly told myself it meant nothing. I was good at compartmentalizing. Years of being the only gay kid in my small Texas hometown had taught me how to feel things quietly, how to want things without letting it show. Besides, Adrian had never given me any indication he was interested in men. He didn't talk about dating much at all. Actually, which I'd learned was usually a sign someone was either getting over a breakup or firmly straight and disinterested in discussing their love life with their gay roommate. The smoke detector finally stopped its shrill screaming. I dumped the charred popcorn kernels into the trash and grabbed 2 beers from the fridge instead. Movie night is officially pivoting to beer night, I announced. Joining him on the couch, Adrian had already queued up some foreign film I'd never heard of his choice this week. We'd fallen into this routine about 2 months after he moved in. Tuesday nights were for bad cooking attempts and good movies. A small pocket of normalcy in our busy lives. He took the beer I offered, our fingers brushing briefly. I felt it like static electricity, that small shock of contact, and pulled my hand back maybe a little too quickly if he noticed he didn't say anything. He just smiled and clicked play. The film was beautiful and melancholic. Something about memory and loss and the spaces between what we say and what we mean. Adrian loved these kinds of movies, the ones that made you feel everything all at once. I usually complained about the lack of explosions or plot, but secretly, I loved them too. Loved the way he'd lean forward during the important scenes, completely absorbed. Loved the discussions we'd have afterward, dissecting themes and symbolism until late into the night. Tonight, though, I found myself watching him more than the screen. He'd changed into comfortable clothes after work. Soft gray sweatpants and a faded college t-shirt that had seen better days. His feet were bare, tucked under him on the couch. There was something intimate about seeing him this way, unguarded and relaxed in our shared space, about halfway through the movie. During a particularly quiet scene, I noticed his head beginning to droop. His breathing had evened out, deeper and slower. The beer sat forgotten on the coffee table, still half full. He was falling asleep. I should have woken him up, suggested he go to his room if he was tired. That would have been the reasonable, roommate-appropriate thing to do instead. I sat very still and let it happen. Adrian's head tilted slowly to the side, eventually coming to rest against my shoulder. The weight of it was gentle, but present, undeniable. I could feel the warmth of him through my shirt. Smell the faint scent of his shampoo, something clean and cedar dash like my heart, was doing something complicated in my chest. A rhythm that felt both terrifying and inevitable. I couldn't look away from him. In sleep, his face relaxed completely, the small line he got between his eyebrows when he concentrated smoothing away. His lips were slightly parted, and I could feel each breath he took, steady against my arm. This was dangerous territory. I knew that. I'd built careful walls around these feelings, treated them like background noise I could tune out. But with him asleep against me, warm and trusting and close, those walls felt paper-thin. I thought about all the moments over the past 6 months that Akana dismissed as simple friendship. The way he'd brought me coffee on mornings when I had early meetings, remembering exactly how I took it. The time he'd stayed up until 2 a.m. helping me prepare for a presentation, making terrible jokes to keep me from spiraling into anxiety. The sticky note I'd found last week that just said, "You're doing great." Marcus with a little doodle of a smiling molecule. Were those just friend things? Or had I been willfully blind to something else? Something that scared me too much to acknowledge. On screen, the movie's protagonist was making some grand confession, the subtitles blurring as I stopped paying attention completely. All I could focus on was the man sleeping against me, the rise and fall of his chest, the impossible softness of this moment. Adrian shifted slightly in his sleep, his hand moving to rest on my thigh. It was casual, unconscious. He probably didn't even know he was doing it. But I felt it like a brand, the weight of his palm burning through the denim of my jeans. I held my breath, afraid that even the smallest movement would break. Whatever spell had been cast over this ordinary Tuesday evening, the truth I'd been avoiding crystallized in that moment, sharp and unavoidable. I had feelings for my roommate, real, deep. Complicated feelings that went far beyond appreciation for a good movie companion or gratitude for someone who split the rent on time. I was falling for Adrian Chen. Maybe I'd been falling this whole time. Each shared laugh and late-night conversation pulling me deeper into something I hadn't planned for, hadn't prepared for. Something that could ruin the best friendship I'd had in years if I wasn't careful. The movie ended. Credits rolling in silence. I didn't move to turn it off. I just sat there, Adrian sleeping peacefully against me, and let myself feel everything I'd been pushing down for months. Outside our window, the city hummed with late-night traffic. Someone laughed on the street below. The refrigerator kicked on with its familiar rattle. Normal sounds of a normal night, except nothing felt normal anymore. Adrian's breathing shifted, small sound escaping his lips, almost like my name, but softer, dreamlike. His fingers tightened slightly on my thigh, and my whole world narrowed to that single point of contact. I should move, should wake him up, should protect the careful equilibrium of our friendship. But I didn't. Instead, I did something I'd never let myself do before. I lifted my hand and gently brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. My fingers lingered for just a second against his temple. Feeling the warmth of his skin, he didn't wake. Just leaned further into the touch, into me. Like even in sleep he was seeking something, and God help me, I wanted to give it to him. Wanted to close the small distance between us and press my lips to his forehead, his cheek, his mouth. Wanted to wake him up with a confession that I'd been rehearsing in my head without even realizing it, I think. I'm in love with you. But fear kept me frozen. Fear of rejection, of losing him, of changing something perfect into something broken. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. I knew I should move, should end this before it became something I couldn't take back. But Adrian was warm against me, trusting in a way that made my throat tight. Just a few more minutes, I told myself. Just a little while longer in this moment before reality came crashing back in. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known as. I sat there in the flickering light of the TV. My roommate asleep on my shoulder was that Adrian was already awake. The first thing I noticed when consciousness crept back in was the warmth. The second was the sense, something familiar and comforting that I couldn't quite place through the fog of half-sleep. The third was the gentle pressure of fingers in my hair, barely there, hesitant and tender. Marcus's fingers. I kept my breathing steady, even though my heart had started to race. Kept my body relaxed against his His shoulder, even though every nerve ending had suddenly come alive with awareness. He thought I was asleep, and he was touching me. The realization sent electricity down my spine. I'd been drifting in and out for the last 20 minutes, aware enough to feel him watching me, to sense the shift in his breathing when I'd unconsciously rested my head on his shoulder. Part of me had wanted to wake up to save us both from the awkwardness. But a larger part, the part that had been harboring feelings for Marcus since approximately 2 weeks after. I moved and wanted to see what he would do now. I knew. His thumb traced a feather-light path along my temple, and I had to fight to keep from leaning into it, from giving myself away. Through my lashes barely open, I could see his face in profile. He was looking down at me with an expression I'd never seen before, and unguarded. It's full of longing and something that looked almost like pain. My chest tightened. How long had he been looking at me like this when I wasn't aware? How many moments had I missed because I was too afraid to see them? I'd spent months convincing myself that my feelings for Marcus were one-sided. He'd never given me any real indication he was interested, never flirted or crossed any lines. He was kind and funny and brilliant, but always in a way that felt carefully platonic. Safe. I'd dated women in college, convinced myself I could make that work. Then I'd dated a few men after graduation, but nothing had ever felt right. Nothing until I saw Marcus's listing for a roommate and felt something click into place during our first meeting. Recognition I hadn't expected and didn't know what to do with. Living with him had been both wonderful and torturous. Wonderful because he was exactly the kind of person I'd always hoped to find. Someone who made me laugh, challenged me intellectually, who left space for comfortable silence. Torturous because every day reinforced how much I wanted something more. Something he clearly didn't want to offer, or so I'd thought. His hand moved from my hair to my shoulder, a gentle touch that felt like a question he didn't know how to ask. I could feel the tension in his body, the way he was holding himself perfectly still, like he was afraid to breathe wrong. The movie credits had long since finished. The screen was dark now, the room lit only by the ambient glow of the city through our windows. We existed in a bubble of possibility, a moment stretched thin between what we were and what we could be. I made a decision. Slowly, I let my eyes flutter open, adjusting as if I was just waking up. Marcus's hand immediately pulled back, his body going rigid with panic. "Hey," I murmured, my voice rough with sleep that was only partially faked. "Did I fall asleep?" "Yeah." His voice was tight, carefully controlled. "Sorry, I should have woken you up earlier. You should probably go to bed." Sat up, but didn't move away, creating only inches of space between us on the couch. In the dim light, I could see his face was flushed, his jaw tight. He wouldn't quite meet my eyes. "What time is it?" I asked, buying myself time to figure out what to say next. "Just after midnight. The movie's over?" "Yeah." Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything unsaid. I could feel him preparing to retreat, to stand up and end this moment before it could become something real. Before I could lose my nerve, I spoke. "Marcus, were you touching my hair while I was asleep?" His entire body went still. The look on his face was pure panic, like I'd just caught him at something terrible. "I know, you had something in your hair. I didn't have anything in my hair," I said gently. He stood abruptly, putting distance between us. "Adrian, I'm sorry. That was inappropriate." "I shouldn't have. Why was it inappropriate?" The question seemed to throw him. He ran a hand through his own hair, a nervous gesture I'd seen hundreds of times. "Because we're roommates? Because you were asleep? He stopped himself, jaw clenching. "Because you what?" "Nothing. Forget it. I'm going to bed." He moved toward the hallway, but I stood too, catching his wrist. He froze at the contact, his pulse racing under my fingers. "Marcus, wait. Please." "Adrian, I wasn't completely asleep," I said quickly before I could talk myself out of honesty. "I was awake. I felt you. I wanted you to..." He turned slowly to face me, his expression unreadable in the shadows. "What?" My heart was hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it. "I've been awake for a while. And I didn't move because I wanted to see if I took a breath. I've been waiting for you to touch me like that for months." The silence that followed felt eternal. I watched emotions flicker across his face. Disbelief, hope, fear, all tangled together. "You're serious," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper, completely serious. "But you didn't seem," he shook his head. "I thought you were straight." A laugh escaped me, slightly hysterical. "I thought you thought I was straight. I've been trying so hard not to make you uncomfortable." Uncomfortable? Something shifted in his expression, the fear giving way to something else. "Adrian, you've been driving me crazy since the day you moved in. Do you have any idea how hard it's been living with you? Being around you every day and pretending I don't feel." He stopped again, but this time I didn't let him retreat. "Don't feel what?" I stepped closer, still holding his wrist. "Say it." His eyes met mine, and in them I saw everything I'd been hoping for and too afraid to look for. "Don't feel like every time you smile at me, my whole day gets better. Don't feel like I want to know every thought in your head. Don't feel like I'm falling in love with you." The words hung between us, vulnerable and brave and exactly what I needed to hear. "Good," I whispered, "because I'm already there. Have been for a while." His free hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. "Really? Really?" The sticky notes were me trying to tell you without actually telling you. "The coffee in the morning, I learned your order the first week. I want an excuse to do something for you." Smile broke across his face, transforming it. "We're idiots. Complete idiots," I agreed. The space between us felt charged, magnetic. I could see the moment he made his decision, the way his walls finally came down completely. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, his voice rough with want and wonder. Instead of answering, I closed the distance between us. The first touch of his lips against mine was gentle, questioning. But when I responded, when I opened to him and pulled him closer, something ignited. His hand slid into my hair, tilting my head for a better angle. I gripped his waist, pulling him flush against me. The kiss deepened, months of unspoken longing pouring into it. He tasted like beer and something uniquely him, and I wanted more. Wanted everything. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard. He rested his forehead against mine. "Can't believe this is happening," he murmured. "Believe it." I kissed the corner of his mouth, his jaw, savoring the freedom to touch him this way. "I'm not going anywhere." "What about the roommate situation?" he asked, but he was smiling, his hands mapping the planes of my back under my shirt. "We'll figure it out. Maybe we need to establish some new ground rules." I pretended to think about it, my fingers tracing patterns on his chest. "Like you're no longer allowed to walk around shirtless after workouts. It's been killing me." He laughed, the sound vibrating through both of us. "Oh, really? And what about your habit of doing yoga in those impossibly tight pants?" That was strategic. "I was hoping you'd notice." I noticed. I definitely noticed. He kissed me again, slower this time, but no less intense. One kiss became two, then three, until we were pressed together on the couch again. But this time, with no pretense, no barriers. His mouth traveled down my neck, and I gasped at the sensation, my hands tightening in his hair. "Marcus, yeah, I really like you." He pulled back just enough to look at me, his eyes dark and full of promise. "I really like you too. Have for a long time." "How long?" "Remember that dinner party 2 months in? When you made everyone laugh with that story about your design professor?" I nodded. "That night, I realized I was in trouble that night." My heart swelled. "Why didn't you say anything?" Scared. "Didn't want to lose you as a friend if you didn't feel the same way?" "Oh, I do." "Feel the same way, I mean?" His smile was radiant. "Good." We stayed like that for a while, learning the geography of each other, what made the other sigh, where to touch to elicit that sharp intake of breath. It was exhilarating and comfortable all at once. The culmination of months of tension, finally finding release. Eventually. We moved to his room, larger than mine, with the bed we'd assembled together when he first moved in. We lay facing each other in the dark, hands intertwined. "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now we figure it out," Marcus said simply. "Together? I like the sound of that." He pulled me closer, and I tucked my head under his chin, listening to his heartbeat steady and strong. Adrian. Thank you for falling asleep on me tonight. I smiled against his chest. Thank you for not waking me up. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. Inside our small apartment, something had shifted fundamentally. A new beginning, written in the language of touch and truth and the courage to feel. Tomorrow, we'd have to navigate the logistics, the questions, the adjustment of being roommates who were also something more. But tonight, wrapped in each other's arms, existed in perfect simplicity. I'd spent so long hiding my feelings, convinced they were too much, too risky. But Marcus had been doing the same thing, both of us trapped by fear when we could have had this all along. No more hiding. No more pretending, just this. His breath evening out into sleep, his arms around me, and the knowledge that I was exactly where I was meant to be. How will Marcus and Adrian navigate their new relationship? And what challenges await them as roommates who've become lovers? Find out in the final part. Morning light filtered through the blinds in soft stripes across Marcus's face. I'd been awake for about 20 minutes. Just watching him sleep, something I could do now without guilt or pretense. He looked peaceful, younger somehow without the careful guardedness he usually wore. His hand was still tangled with mine where we'd fallen asleep, fingers interlaced. I memorized the moment knowing that whatever came next, we'd cross the line we couldn't uncross. I didn't want to uncross it anyway. Marcus stirred, his eyes opening slowly. For a split second, I saw confusion flicker across his face, that disoriented moment of waking in an unexpected configuration. Then his gaze focused on me, and a smile spread across his face that made my chest ache in the best possible way. "Hey," he murmured, voice rough with sleep. "Hey yourself. So last night really happened?" I brought our joined hands to my lips, kissing his knuckles. Very much happened. He pulled me closer, kissing me properly. Slow, leisurely, good morning kiss that tasted like possibility. When we broke apart, he was grinning. "I have a meeting at 9, he said regretfully, glancing at the clock. "Okay, but I don't want to move, so don't," he laughed. Tempting, but I'm leading the presentation. Fine, be responsible. I kissed him once more before letting him go. "But we're talking about this tonight, right?" "Actually talking?" Something serious crossed his expression. "Definitely. I want to do this right, Adrian. I don't want to mess up what we have. We won't. We'll figure it out." He showered and dressed for work while I made coffee. Falling into our normal routine, except now he kissed me goodbye at the door, a casual, domestic gesture that felt revolutionary. After he left, I stood in our apartment, my coffee growing cold in my hands, and tried to process the enormity of what had changed. The truth was, I'd been terrified last night. Terrified of putting myself out there, of admitting feelings I'd been carefully hiding. But the alternative, continuing to pretend. To live in the half space of almost had become impossible. I thought about my parents. Immigrants who'd worked brutal hours to give me opportunities they'd never had. They'd taught me to be practical, to choose security over risk. They'd never explicitly said anything about my sexuality, but I'd learned early that certain topics weren't discussed. When I brought my college girlfriend home, they'd been warm and welcoming. When I'd dated men later, I'd never mentioned it. Marcus was different, though. This felt different big enough that I couldn't imagine hiding it. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Still can't believe last night was real. Can't stop smiling in this meeting." "People are giving me weird looks," I grinned, typing back. "Focus on your presentation. We'll celebrate later. That's what I'm afraid of." "Can't focus when I'm thinking about celebrating with you." The flirting continued throughout the day, a stark contrast to our previous careful messages about groceries and utility bills. It felt like we'd opened a floodgate. Months of restrained interest pouring out in playful texts and emoji strings we'd never used before. By the time evening rolled around, I'd cleaned the apartment, attempted to cook something that didn't resemble burnt offerings, and changed my shirt 3 times before settling on the first one. I heard his key in the lock and felt my heart rate spike like a teenager on a first date. Marcus walked in carrying flowers, actual flowers. A mixed bouquet from the corner store. "These are for you," he said. looking both confident and shy at the same time. I took them, genuinely touched. You bought me flowers? I wanted to do this properly. The whole asking you out on a date thing. We live together. This makes it convenient for goodnight kisses. He grinned, pulling me close. Adrian Chen, would you like to go on a date with me? A real one. Not just watching movies on the couch. I love watching movies on the couch with you. So that's a yes. I kissed him instead of answering, wrapping my arms around his neck. He tasted like mint gum and felt like home. It's a yes, I confirmed when we broke apart. We ordered Thai food our usual. Wednesday routine and spread it out on the living room floor. Sitting across from each other, like we had 100 times before. Except now, Marcus kept reaching across to touch my hand, my wrist. Like he needed the constant confirmation that this was real. So we should probably talk about logistics, I said, between bites of pad thai, romantic. I'm serious. We're roommates. What if this doesn't work out? His expression sobered. Do you think it won't? No. But we should be realistic. We've known each other 6 months. We should probably have some kind of plan. Marcus set down his chopsticks. Okay, what are you thinking? Maybe we take it slow. Keep our separate rooms for now. Figure out what this is before we combine everything. He nodded slowly. That makes sense. Though I'm going to have a hard time sleeping without you now. We can still sleep together. We just maintain our own spaces, too. Independence. I like that. He squeezed my hand. What about telling people? That was the question I'd been avoiding. What do you want to do? I want to tell people I have a boyfriend. That I'm crazy about him. That we're together. The word boyfriend sent warmth flooding through me. Yeah, but only if you're comfortable. I know coming out is different for everyone. I thought about it. My parents. They're traditional. This might be hard for them. We don't have to rush. We can take our time with family stuff. What about your family? Marcus smiled. My mom's been asking me when I'm going to find a nice guy since I broke up with David 3 years ago. She'll probably throw a party when I tell her. I want to meet her. She'll love you. Fair warning, she's going to ask when we're getting married approximately 5 minutes after meeting you. I laughed, the tension easing. Let's maybe get through the first month before planning the wedding. Deal. We talked late into the night, mapping out boundaries and hopes, addressing fears and expectations. Marcus told me about his ex, about the relationship that ended because they wanted different things. I told him about the confusion of my college years, about finally accepting I was attracted to men, and the relief of that realization. Can I ask you something? Marcus said eventually, pulling me against him on the couch. Anything? What was going through your head last night? When you were pretending to be asleep? I thought about how to answer honestly. I was terrified. I thought if I opened my eyes and acknowledged what was happening, it might disappear. Like if I moved wrong, you'd realize you didn't actually want me. His arms tightened around me. I've wanted you since you walked into this apartment for the first time and immediately started rearranging furniture. He said I could make it my own. I know it was perfect. You were perfect. He kissed my temple. I kept trying to talk myself out of it. Told myself it was just proximity or loneliness or anything other than what it actually was, which was falling in love. Slowly at first, then all at once. I turned in his arms to face him. I love you too. In case that wasn't clear, say it again. I love you, Marcus. His kiss was deep and thorough, a claiming that made me dizzy with want. We made our way to his bedroom, our bedroom now. Effectively peeling off, clothes between kisses and laughter. Being with him was like finally understanding. A language I'd been hearing all my life but couldn't speak. Every touch felt like a conversation, every sigh a word of affirmation. We learned each other slowly, what made the other gasp, where to linger, how to build pleasure until it crested and broke like waves. Afterwards, wrapped around each other in the tangled sheets. Marcus traced invisible patterns on my skin. So this is us now, he said softly. This is us. I really like us. Me too. I could feel sleep pulling at me, heavy and content. But before I drifted off, I said, Marcus, thank you for being brave enough to touch my hair last night. He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest where my head rested. Thank you for being brave enough to call me out on it. The sticky note on the bathroom mirror read, "You're beautiful. Also, we're out of toothpaste. Love you." I smiled, adding my own note below it. "Your bias. And I'll pick some up. Love you more." Our apartment had evolved. My design sketches were scattered across the dining table Marcus used for his chemistry journals. His coffee mugs lived next to my tea collection. We'd merged our spaces bit by bit, a physical representation of our lives intertwining. It hadn't been perfect. We'd had our first fight about dishes in the sink, our second about whose turn it was to clean the bathroom. We'd navigated the awkwardness of running into Marcus's ex at a coffee shop, the stress of me finally telling my parents I was dating someone a man. Specifically, my mother had been quiet on the phone for a long moment before saying, "Is he good to you?" When I said yes, she'd replied, "Then bring him to dinner next month." It wasn't the enthusiastic acceptance Marcus's family had given me, but it was a start. My father still didn't quite know what to say, but he'd shaken Marcus's hand at our first meeting and asked him about his work. Small steps. Marcus emerged from his bedroom. He still technically had his own room. Though he hadn't slept there in 2 months, dressed for work. "Ready for the double date tonight?" he asked, kissing me in greeting. Our friends Sophie and James had finally insisted on meeting the boyfriend Marcus couldn't stop talking about. I was nervous, but excited. "Ready, should I mention how we got together?" "You mean the part where I creepily touched your hair while you fake slept? Or the part where I manipulated the situation to see what you'd do?" He grinned. "We're both kind of terrible. Perfect for each other." "Exactly." He grabbed his bag, pausing at the door. "Hey, Adrian." "Yeah, I'm really happy. Like, happier than I've been in years. Just wanted you to know." My heart swelled. "Me too. I love you. Love you more. Not possible." He blew me a kiss and left for work. I stood in our apartment hour home and marveled at how one night had changed everything. How a moment of vulnerability, of risk, had opened up a future I hadn't let myself imagine. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Already missing you." "Is that pathetic?" I typed back, "Completely pathetic. I'm not missing you at all, liar. Okay? Maybe a little knew it. See you tonight, boyfriend." I set down my phone, grinning like an idiot. In a few hours, I'd go to work, sketch some designs, have coffee with colleagues. Normal life things. But I'd do them as someone loved, as someone brave enough to risk everything. For the possibility of this morning kisses and stupid text, messages and a future that stretched out bright and uncertain, and entirely ours to create. The apartment still smelled faintly like burnt popcorn sometimes, a reminder of that Tuesday night. But now it also smelled like Marcus's cologne, my paint supplies, the flowers he brought home every Friday, the life we were building together. I'd spent so long being careful, protecting myself from hurt, and then Adrian fell asleep on my shoulder, and everything I'd been protecting myself from became everything I wanted most. Sometimes the best things happen. When you're brave enough to let them, when you stop pretending to be asleep and open your eyes to what's right in front of you. This was that story, our story, and it was just beginning.